and we are honoured to be here for the ceremony. So over to you.
Martin, thank you for the warmth and generosity entirely characteristic of you, of that welcome. But more particularly, friends and colleagues, I know you will join me in offering heartfelt and fulsome thanks to Martin for all that he has done and continues to do, and doubtless will go on doing, in support of a cause which is as dear to him as it is to you and to me. Everybody knows, Martin, that you're passionate about the work of the Patchwork Foundation, to which you give unstintingly both of your time and of your experience. And the mission of the foundation has a real piquancy in an age in which there is a pervasive cynicism about politics and politicians, and yet when we know that the alternatives to politics scarcely bear contemplation. Only last week, my friends, I had the great honor of speaking at Sheffield University, giving the Bernard Crick annual lecture. Well, some people in this room may recall Bernard Crick, Professor Bernard Crick, who became Sir Bernard Crick. Bernard Crick was a quite outstanding politics academic. He devoted his professional life to the study, teaching, and analysis of politics, and he wrote a number of great tomes, one of which was called In Defense of Politics, and there was much to it, but a core part of his thesis was that although people, even at the time of his writing, were sometimes inclined to use the word politics in a pejorative or disobliging way, politics was then and is now the means by which we arbitrate between conflicting points of view. We seek to reconcile different and sometimes conflicting interests, and we try to resolve, to use a similar word, conflicts between people, between communities, between opposing viewpoints. And we do so, of course, peacefully, because that is the essence of politics. The alternatives, really, which don't warrant any time at all, are either to have an all-powerful state to which no alternative viewpoint is allowed to be expressed, or we have a kind of Hobbesian war of nature in which people are just fighting each other all the time, and there is something similar or akin to a civil war taking place. So a society that has politics is a society that has recognized the need for organization and for systems and for mechanisms of arbitration and resolution and consensus building. So you won't be surprised to know that I am pro the Patchwork Foundation for the magnificent work it does, and I am unashamedly, for all our mistakes and all our inadequacies and all the criticisms that can be leveled at us, pro politicians and politics. And I don't think we should spend all of our time, or even very much of our time, highlighting our shortcomings. There will always be people who are very happy to do that. And actually, it's the easiest way, Martin, John, parliamentary colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to get a cheap round of applause to rubbish the politician on the panel. It's an easy and cheap way to do so. And sometimes it's justified, but very often it isn't. And so I want to celebrate the work of the foundation for a start, because I think that work in seeking to facilitate and to encourage the participation in politics of underrepresented, deprived and minority communities is as salient today as it has ever been. Despite 5 years of achievement, there is much work still to do, and the glint of missionary ambition, I think, is still, Martin, in your eye and in the eyes of the trustees of the foundation. I want to pay tribute to all of those who work voluntarily in support of the foundation, who go on its courses, who benefit from its programs, one of whom so eloquently now at university we heard from only a few moments ago, because there is a skill, there is a training, there is an equipment to be learned and honed and nurtured in being a good campaigner, in being a good politician, in being a good activist, in being a good communicator. It isn't something that just happens overnight. So thank you for taking an interest. In a very real personal sense, Martin, I'm very grateful because people from the Patchwork Foundation very generously came to my own constituency during the election, not exhorted to do so by me. They very much offered to do so, and they brought a real dynamism and vitality to our work, and their presence on the streets and their willingness not just to talk but to listen and to hear people's points of view was spontaneously appreciated by constituents of mine, whether they were voting for me or not, whether they were voting at all. It was something new and rather different to see a well-organized, deeply enthusiastic and very lively group of at least 20 people racing back and forth on the streets of my constituency one Saturday afternoon. They could perfectly well have been doing something else, but they didn't. They chose to do that, and I knew they did it in a great many other colleagues' constituencies as well. So thank you to them, and I celebrate that contribution. I also want, colleagues, and I hope I can be forgiven for doing this, to thank my parliamentary colleagues who engage with the work of the foundation and give it ongoing support. There are many people here who've been doing so for some years, and that's hugely appreciated, senior and experienced colleagues. But one of the things that really gives me great encouragement, my friends, is to see and hear and be able to bear testimony myself to the sheer industry and energy and commitment of the new intake of members of Parliament across the political spectrum. Constantly new members who are active, who are making a difference, who are getting involved, who are taking up causes prompted by e-petitions or local activity or initiative or constituency representation of one form or another. I see Antoinette Sandbach, who's brought a real passion to the chamber and focused on issues near and dear to her and to her Edisbury constituents in a way that won't be forgotten and as one respect. I see in my line of vision Heidi Allen, who's been an extremely articulate and sometimes very outspoken new member of Parliament. And I don't say that in a pejorative way. That's a really good thing for her constituency and for the House of Commons. And Kirsty Blackman from the Scottish National Party, I know I'm busily looking around in the spirit of speaker impartiality for a new Labour entrant to the House of Commons since 2015. I'm sure there is such present. Jess Phillips. Well, there's hardly been anybody more active than Jess Phillips, with her voice, with her votes on the media, in every possible way. We've heard Jess's thoughts, and I'm thrilled about that. That's why I've just asked Jess recently to serve on a panel that I've set up to try to make a better, more gender-sensitive Parliament, because I think that she'll do a great job in support of that work. So there is much to celebrate, and I'm much more interested in accentuating the positive than looking to find fault. It's very easy to knock. We are all flawed, and we've got to ask, how can we do better and improve on our work? But there's much good that's going on, both by members of Parliament and by external organisations. And the Patchwork Foundation has really established itself, and it deserves huge credit for what it does. And politicians and the media sometimes have a difficult and tense relationship, and that's a good thing in a free society. There'll always be a degree of creative tension, but credit where credit is due, not just for his professional competence as a journalist, but for his commitment to the work of the Patchwork Foundation. To John Pienaar, I say a very warm thank you, John, for what you do and the time you make available and the insights you're willing to share with people who are coming after you, either wanting careers in journalism or indeed in the practice of politics and the statecraft skill set that requires. So that is enough for me. You know that we're going very shortly to proceed to the awards. I am now looking to